Hello, my name is Dane Olson, and this presentation is about media arts education and how it could transform learning and education. This is based in a forthcoming book that I'm finishing soon for Routledge with that same theme. I'm a media arts education specialist and have been teaching with media arts for over 35 years. I'm the chair of the Media Arts Committee for a National Coalition for Arts Education Organizations. I've been a teacher and administrator in Los Angeles Unified School District for the past 30 years. I'm now retired, and I've had a leadership role in the development and establishment of media arts in LA Unified and California and nationally. Currently, I'm leading an initiative to form a network of media arts educators across the US and supporters in order to form a professional association and advance media arts. In that regard, I'm currently working on legislation to fully establish media arts in California. This is a brief history of media arts. Surprisingly, media arts goes back over a century. Photography was offered under industrial arts in the late 1800s. Filmmaking came into classrooms as early as the 20s and 30s, with hundreds of movies produced in schools across the country. Fast forward to the early 90s, and Minnesota was the first to develop standards in media arts. LAUSD had an initiative which I led from 2006 to 2010, which involved demonstration classrooms with a variety of teachers with different backgrounds teaching the breadth of media arts courses, including interactive design, animation, game design, web design, dance, video, that sort of thing. So we're kind of pushing the boundaries of the discipline and how it was defined at that time. This led fairly directly or influenced the development of national media arts standards. I led the writing team for that process. Those standards were published in 2014 and distributed, and states decided whether or not they wanted to adopt or adapt them. 30 states did take on media arts, and so there's small incremental developments of media arts across the country. States are developing courses, specifically training, professional development, grouping these teachers together in collectives and so forth. So beginning to become more formally organized in states. And so we're trying to do that in California as well and create that legislation that will make it fully established as a subject area that can then receive the Proposition 28 funding for arts education and hire new teachers for media arts. Now, media arts is defined as technology or machine-based creative production and design. It's more of an indirect form of production that uses machines. So when you take a photo, you're using a machine that produces the image, for example. Artificial intelligence can be considered then a media arts form. And we have these primary categories: photo imaging, video, sound, etc., and then subforms, a plethora of those: motion graphics, visual effects, music, sound design, e-journalism, wearable tech, holography, augmented mixed reality. It's a very diverse mix of forms and capabilities here in these forms. So it makes it a little bit hard to wrap your head around media arts. That's part of its problem is, people are always asking, how do you define it? It's kind of fuzzy as we think about it because it's so diffused and we're living in it. We're sort of immersed in it. We don't have a good concept of what that entails, all those forms. So with this capability, students can produce or design anything imaginable. This is a great capacity, which provides a powerful addition to the educational program that I don't think has been fully appreciated or recognized. Given this very diverse range of forms and tools, you can begin to ask the question, what can't students learn about or experience through media arts? Now, media arts can access and integrate all the arts disciplines. It's inter-arts. And if you think of it being in the middle there, that you can access light, you can access motion and sound, you can access dance, you can access visuals, action, movement. Things could be kinesthetic and text, theater, story. Combine all those, you get the profuse number of genres and forms that come out of these, as well as interactive and virtual design, which brings it to another level of complexity and capability. So again, just imagine what students can do, and so therefore they can learn just about anything through using these processes to produce things. For example, a video about science, interactive model of a mathematical process, or a TV production studio designed for English language learners. So you're setting up to practice and really create an intensive, immersive environment for language acquisition. Students are talking to each other, negotiating things, writing scripts, analyzing things, doing a lot of talking as they logistically operate things, make things happen in projects. So makes a language-rich environment. Now, in my book, I go into the theory of embodied cognition, which is very relevant to the subject area. In fact, media arts is embodied cognition. Mark Johnson is a philosopher and cognitive linguist. He's written several books relating to embodied cognition. In my own book, I specifically reference Johnson's The Meaning of the Body, 2007, as it describes the multimodal formation of meaning that is the basis of our thinking and conceptualization. Johnson and other embodiment theorists argue that the mainstream theory of computationalism is incorrect. The brain does not operate like a computer in forming and understanding. It has none of those components. It does not work by that linear mechanical process. And there is not like this separate parallel logic processing cognitive network that works off of amodal symbols. There's like no evolutionary reason why our brains would biologically develop that sort of a mechanism when it can operate directly off of the sensory motor networks. He cites research and argues that higher abstract thought emerges directly from our sensory motor networks. Cognition meaning a result of multimodal aesthetic interfusion and empathy with our dynamic environment. Say with topographic sensory mapping, we're essentially interdimensionally sort of mapping what we see in the outside world. So if I'm seeing trees and buildings and clouds and so forth, it's my ability to aesthetically absorb those and map them in my body as they change, as they move, as I move through them. And as I see patterns and I see anomalies by which I sort of respond and operate in this environment dynamically. And it's not built out of logic processing, it's like aesthetic processing, which is very complex, deep, rich. Now, to summarize this approach to cognition, we aesthetically mirror the world, we aesthetically empathize, translate our dynamic world through these sensory motor matrices. And that goes for abstract concepts and content as well. Metaphors are a major method by which we do that. For example, I wrap my head around a concept, meaning I grasp it, with my brain, I comprehend it, So these metaphors are really like laced throughout our language and our conceptual thinking. And Johnson and Lakoff found that most of our concepts are essentially metaphorical. You can't deal with abstraction without putting it into a metaphor to make sense of it, to animate it, to make it something I can understand and work with. So Aesthetics then it becomes the foundation of any profound understanding of meaning and thought. This is a profound statement. The conclusion that Johnson reaches, that humans embody and translate the world aesthetically and through something called aesthetic empathy, which I use a lot of my book. That's kind of the core of my book there. This ability to empathize with things, to understand them in our world. And Dasaniake, I don't know how you pronounce her name, but Homo aestheticus comes to similar conclusions and uses the term aesthetic empathy. Now, interestingly enough, media arts does this same thing. It's a discipline whereby we construct multimodal meaning or aesthetic empathy through the interfusion of aesthetic elements and dimensions. Exactly the same. Access integrates all the other arts disciplines into its inter-arts comprehensive holistic aesthetics, extended by technology into artistry, design, communications, interactive and virtual domains. It represents a totality of human experience, a societal formation. So its aesthetics is holistic and comprehensive. So put into education is about students understanding and applying core content. Media arts can facilitate that process through its multimodal forms and products, which can make the learning process more accessible to more students. It is universal design for learning, that movement by caste, whereby special education students have many means of sort of connecting with, accessing core content, no matter their disability, and we accommodate them through that system. We can do the same thing through media arts for any learner needs to learn things in a certain way. You can make models that are accessible to them and more understandable to them. So this is the basis of our society as well, and how we empathize with this global planet that we live on. And so you can use this in the different subject areas to translate them aesthetically into different models, simulations, interfaces, platforms, application, or any kind of video, animation, etc., music. Education is about students understanding and applying core content. May can facilitate that. Media arts education can facilitate that process through its multimodal forms and products. And so that's why we can access these different subject areas, integrate them. That's why media arts can serve this central role in education, provide a space for active production and invention and design, which services the other subject areas. Not that it's not an art form in itself, of course it is, and wonderful and expressive, powerful art form unto itself, but this is where it can really do a great service to all education, all students, and advance the educational institution into a new model that is not a factory model. It's not linear. It's not one size fits all. It's not top down. It's much more personalizing. It's much more engaging, student-centered, constructivist, etc. It can sit at the middle of the institution and sort of reform the whole institution around that student-centered model that is very flexible, very adaptable. Okay. Now, media arts in particular is embodied, but also incorporates the abstract, intellectual, cognitive aspects of academics through game design, for example. We write scripts, we do programming, we integrate mathematics, physics, engineering components, make games about mathematics, we incorporate mathematics in the construction of the game. And embodied cognition is the same process. We can understand media arts to be an extension of mind, our nervous systems, as per Marshall McLuhan, 1964, understanding media, the extensions of man. that it's not an abstract concept anymore. It's not theoretical. We literally have our devices, and Jobs' revolution and the device design is that there's this seamlessness between the human and the interface. Now, take the concept of global warming. In this one example, we are translating the abstract concept of global warming through MeArt's aesthetic synthesizer into a multimedia product. Students have to go through a multimodal cognitive process in order to do that. And so think of this video as an aesthetic translation of meaning, putting this abstract concept into
global warming is happening at
embodied
record
meaning.
levels due to the increased amount of greenhouse gases generated by human activities, leading to a drastic change of Earth's environment.
Rising seas, heat waves, intense rainfall, storm surges, and droughts are some of the effects of the accelerating climate change.
Okay, so
Global
this is the cognitive process that's laid out in the media arts standards, a holistic approach to cognition based on a comprehensive array of a cycle of communicative production. Consider this relates to anything you might say. You first conceive of it, you develop what you're going to say, you're going to construct it, you integrate it into like a holistic, coherent sentence, you practice that, etc. Now, the same applies to production of a movie, game, song, architectural environment, etc. And then out comes this meaningful, multimodal, multimedia cultural product. Here's the various forms that can be translated through to form this cultural meaning, embodied meaning. And so it's a plethora of forms, very diverse methods by which you can attain that meaning, that relevance to that particular student. And then each of those steps in the cognitive process is accompanied by other creative production steps, imagine, brainstorm, event, plan, etc. And so the student is like rehearsing or taking this concept, global warming, putting it through all those processes, really embeds global warming into their thinking or whatever that process is. Think of this one, which is Theoretical Physics by Brian Greene, who's a physicist, and he explains the fabric of the cosmos here. And it's very animated experience through this explanation in this video. Let's put it here.
But the Earth itself. What if you took away all the planets, stars, galaxies,
starts talking about space.
Not just the
what
big
is
stuff,
space?
but tiny things down to the very last atoms of gas and dust. What if you took it all away? What would be left? Most of us would say nothing, and we'd be right. But strangely, we'd also be wrong. What's left is empty space. And as it turns out, empty space is not nothing. It's something. Something with hidden characteristics as real as all the stuff in our everyday lives. In fact, space is so real, it can bend. Space can twist. And it can ripple. So real that empty space itself helps shape everything in the world around us and forms the very fabric of the cosmos.
Okay, so think of that as just aesthetic translation, empathizing, the sound effects, the animation, so forth. We feel it in the body while we're hearing the concept. That makes it so much more rich and accessible, tangible, graspable. You can wrap your head around it. Now we do the same thing with Minecraft, and I had my two sons, 3rd grade, 5th grade. Elijah was 5th grade, and I told them, make this amusement park, all kinds of rides, but think about math when you're doing it. What math do you use? is this game something you can score things in? Where do numbers come into the whole process? Elijah went through this process and listed all of these himself, all of the mathematical concepts that were embedded in this while he was working on it, and through playing it, interacting with it, experiencing these forms of math. Do the same thing with video game design. We do this at USD with USC, and they studied the relationship and they exercised pre-algebraic and algebraic concepts in the construction of the game. And these were the mathematical principles and concepts that they were exercising and improved on. It's demonstrated in that research, which brings us to media arts education's potential. It's aesthetically, cognitively, and vocationally holistic. Students are going through all kinds of activities while they're in a production process. They're planning, they're organizing, they're modeling, they're prototyping, they're envisioning. They are producing, of course, they're writing, they're constructing, they're shooting the video, they're acting, they're speaking, they're editing, refinement, analyzing, evaluating, etc. All the way through this, arguing, debating, So there's a plethora of activities involved. This media arts is the basis of our societal communications design interactivity. McLuhan says it's an extension of our nervous system. We should have students working with that directly, understanding how the society works and operates. What are the capacities that we have with these tools? They should be knowing those. Instead, they're in books, learning, principles in a linear fashion, which they tend to forget. We want them to be in experiential environments where these are deeply understood concepts. And it's not about memorizing information, right? So it's about really understanding that information, applying it. But of course, you do need to get the straight information. And we're not throwing away direct instruction. It's just direct instruction is not everything. It's not the be all and end all. This can form a physical virtual network laboratory across the system. It's creatively unlimited. Of course, you can simulate anything imaginable, translate all content. It's constructionist, student-centered, active. It's an interdimensional textbook and makerspace versus a plain old textbook and teacher. It's got dimensions to it and many ways by which students can participate in its construction and manipulation. More students can access and demonstrate core content in numerous ways. It's more inclusive. And you can measure that in holistic ways. There's a lot more accountability, not less accountability here. You can measure students in so many ways that, it's not, the measurement is not the be all and all that it is in this current system, the standardized test. Oh, now we know that. No, this is like demonstrated in multiple levels and students being able to explain it themselves and be involved in these transdisciplinary projects, which are fun, they're engaging, they're inclusive, student-driven, active, real-world science videos, math-based 3D designs, engineer video games, etc. So that's why it can be the center of education. It is at the center of our society. How we construct our society again powers them to create their own worlds. This is the new model versus the old model. And this would give you really the details in terms of the differences between media arts education and traditional education. I'll end in this slide. You can study that. Tremendous differences here, preferable to the old school factory model, which is linear, mechanical, restricted, passive students, just tons of information that we're delivering, piles and piles and piles of content, thinking that, their brains are computers, they will store this information, accumulate it materially. That way we know what learning loss is because they lost that much information, as though that was really their information objectively implanted in the student by the teacher. So we're talking about something where learning is embedded within activities, social cultural environments, just like connected learning is talking about. This is connected learning, and I hope that we'll be talking to you in the forum. And thank you for listening. And I hope you get in contact with us. MediaArtsEdu.org is our association, forming association. And my name is Dane Olson, DaneOlson.com, and DaneOlson01 at gmail.com if you want to communicate with me. Thank you.